Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
The suitable surroundings. Forests are incredibly powerful places where human emotion is concerned. They can be awe-inspiring, wonderful, serene and calm, exciting or, of course, frightening. Since this is X, let's focus on that last part. Tell us your innawoods stories, anything about forests, glades, clearings, skinwalkers, wendigos, Bigfoots, demons, cults, if it happened in a forest, hell, a national park, tell us. Here's my own. Be in Massey's wood with my dad, looking for Celtic wedge tomb. Find the tomb crumbled and overgrown with moss and weeds, nearly invisible. Take a walk through the rest of the forest, it's recent enough. A planting by the Masseys themselves. If I'm correct, there's ruins of smaller buildings littered throughout the place, taken over by nature. Eventually find the remains of an ice house crumbling into a small river. A place where they used to store meats and the like, hence the name Ice House. Despite it being the middle of summer, I can clearly see my breath. Crouch down into the small tunnel out of the sunlight, it's black dark. Look in and call out some dumb, X bullshit. I'm so funny. Dad calls me to leave, asks if I see anything. Nothing at all. Look back once more before I leave. Eyes focus in the darkness. In the back of the tunnel, crouched, small and white, is a figure. Freak the fuck out and leave. Learn later on X. I may have seen the ghost of a dead child of the Masseys.
Okay, OP, fine. Here is my story. It was not exactly a forest, more a very large orchard that was behind the area where I live. It's since been cut down and turned into a car park. As a kid, my friends and I would spend hours just hanging about in the trees and eating apples and pears straight from the trees in summer. One late evening, me and my friend were playing in the orchard. It was just before dusk and it was raining lightly. For some reason, we started to run fast through all the trees. We got to the end of the orchard. A line of hedges marked the boundary. Just as we both got to the hedge, we both saw a tall shadow figure. As soon as we saw it, we both turned around without saying a word and fled back the way we came, over to the other end of the orchard where the houses were. Mid-run, my friend trips over, but gets back up and continues to sprint. We also smell rotten meat while we are running. When we reach the lights of the building and feel safe, we talk about what we saw. We both saw a tall shadow man wearing a hat. For some reason, my friend wants to go home. The next day I spoke to a friend. Tells me his ankle really hurts. Shows me his ankle. He has a bruise around his ankle in the shape of fingers. I still speak to this guy and we sometimes mention it to each other, that freaky evening in the orchard. Also, it's worth mentioning that at nighttime, where the car park is now, I can sometimes hear the sound of screaming pigs, which I never understood because there are no farm areas near me. Picture related, kind of looked like this.
Living in California near Mariposa. A really nice wooded area, hippy-dippy kind of people around in the town. Meet some cool people on a Meetup.com group and go on a hike with them. Only 6 people show up. Have a really nice easy hike, but one of the girls slips on a rock and twists her ankle. She decided to head back but was carpooling with 3 others, and so we decided to call it a day. It's only a little after noon, so I decide to go on. We are on a trail so I can just follow it back by myself. Walk until about 2:30. And decide to stop for my brown bag and to take a rest in the little shack they have set up off the trail a little. After lunch, I start back on the trail that leads to the main trail from the little break shack, and I cannot remember which way to go. Left or right. Curse out loud, and this guy I didn't see before laughs and asks me if I am lost. He has the oddest accent I have ever heard. Still no idea which one it is. He says he will lead me back, because he is heading back to his car too. Kinda get that tight stomach, tight muscle, hot closed throat feeling, but agree thinking I am just being unfriendly. We are walking for a while, and he keeps asking me oddly specific questions like where I live. Like exactly where. And if I came with anybody. And how many people. Oh shit, I am about to be murdered and buried. Again, I brush it off as me just being unfriendly, thinking he is just a super friendly Euro kinda guy. It is 5 p.m. now. I haven't seen anything familiar and the trail is getting oddly rough and dark. I ask him if he parked in the same parking lot as me. He doesn't really respond, he just laughs and tells me how quiet it is, and how lucky to have such a low traffic day in the early summer. I start to freak out and plan to tell him I have to use the restroom and make a break for it. He stops and I go off in one direction and tell him not to follow me. I am bashful or whatever. I go off in one direction and turn my pack to the front and get my mace out. I am shaking like a leaf in the wind and I can barely breathe. I look at the map and see there should be a larger trail not too far off. I can barely lift my legs and my mouth is super dry, but I start hauling ass away from the trail. I hear some rustling and a shout from behind me. I drop my pack and I start to really tear ass, thinking for sure I am going to be caught and murdered. I feel this weird dizzying feeling as I get a really painful sharp shove on my back. I hear some laughing in the distance and see the trees kind of thinning and a trail appear in front of me. With the power of Usain Bolt, I burst out of the tree line and into a group of college-age people and started bawling my eyes out. Two of the guys asked me if I was attacked by an animal because the back of my shirt has 2 giant gashes and my back is bleeding. I just shake my head and ask if they can bring me back to the parking lot. I get back to my car and the guys insist they call a ranger and wait, but I just want to get the fuck out of there. Probably was just a guy. Not really paranormal, but definitely scary as shit.
I spent my childhood, from about age 5 to 14, roaming the woods with friends in rural parts of central Texas. These forests were sometimes vast and often coupled with rolling plains and prairie lands. Like most kids' parents in these areas, we were allowed to roam free, and my brother and I had a very tight-knit group of friends who would forage, roleplay, and explore with us. It got to the point where we would go out at night, and sometimes whole weekends at a time, just exploring and reenacting medieval-type war games with wooden clubs and swords. Most of the areas we had mapped out according to Middle-earth locations from the Lord of the Rings novels. All of my stories take place 10 to 15 years ago, and unlike most in this thread, are not inherently supernatural. B13. Out with friends, playing defend the base. Along an area we called Helm's Deep, an empty pond-like hole, with trees growing along the edges and in the center, surrounded by tall grass. It is late, and we are about to pack in when we hear loud voices and rummaging coming from the tall grass. We all lay ourselves flat and crawl to the edge of the bowl of the dried pond. We observe 2 to 3 grown men, dressed in flannel. They are looking for something, and seem agitated. Being the idiots we were, we decide to see how close we can sneak to their location. Crouch and wade into the tall grass thicket. We both approach the group of men, and get within arm's reach, still crouching. Hard to see by this time, and the sun has set fully, but our eyes are adjusted. We freeze when we see that all men have rifles, and all of the men have raw hide, navy burlap, masks over their faces. We exchange looks in the grass and hold our breaths until the group moves out. When they leave, we gather our friends and beat feet home. Never found out what they were looking for or why they had masks on and were carrying weapons.
Hillsboro, Missouri. Around 10 years ago, I moved from Hillsboro to closer to city in the county. One last party at home. The house was empty besides the trash can and few items left behind. Lakefront property in a gated community with around 200 houses that lined around the lake that was roughly 1 mile long and sat on 800 acres of common ground wooded area with old horse trails that I would four-wheel a hatchback Subaru on for fun during day and night. At least 30 people at a party, early November, all outside with a good-sized fire. I would throw magnesium on the fire. When it sparkled, spray it with water from a hose and make the fire explode. Stupid, but was fun. By 4 a.m., 3 of us were still next to the fire and everyone else had gone home. We heard a weird noise distanced in the woods and started guessing what it could be. A hurt deer, or hurt hyena that was groaning from pain, or a moose that was looking for a mate. Nothing that sounded native to our area, but very different and strange. As time passed, the noise continued constant and seemed to be moving through the woods as if it were traveling a trail, from one side of the lake in front of us to around behind us. Over the course of 45 minutes, the sound was getting closer to our location, louder as it did, and terrified us. I tried to feel brave, but scared of what type of animal might emerge from the darkness. Possible hungry, I insisted we go inside the empty house and lock the doors out of fear. My friends were not scared and laughed at me. Eventually, the noise became so loud and seemed 60 feet from us in the woods and kept getting closer. They too became jumpy and agreed to go inside, but still thought it probably harmless. I grabbed some sturdy sticks that were like baseball bats and baseball-sized rocks for defense, just in case something came at us. I had been watching animal shows about all sorts of animals worldwide, and this noise seemed unnatural. We never looked out the windows to look for anything. We just lay on the floor and didn't talk about it. couldn't hear the noise from inside, and felt safe. The sun was to come up soon and we left when it did. I've been in those woods many times at night in a car. And my car got stuck and had to walk at least 3 miles to get home. Never had a problem, whatever this was. It scares me to think about those noises and could have been. After reading the posts on this page, I am reminded of that night and more terrified than ever of the woods. I've never been back to that place. But I have a family that lives 5 miles from their back up against heavily wooded land, and they have never had a problem. It was something that should not have been out there. Whatever it was. Glad I did not encounter it, because I doubt it was an animal of some sort. Like we were guessing. Anyone else from Missouri ever experiences something like that? Or even close to it?
About 12. Camping with a church group in Innawoods. A group of us went to play paintball, maybe a 10-minute hike from the campsite. The final game starts and I'm picked off early. After dropping off my gun and mask with one of the counselors, I tell them I'm heading back to camp. Not really supposed to go off alone, but I know the counselor and he knows I can find my way back. After about 5 minutes I start to hear the sounds of kids playing. Soon I reached a fork in the path that I didn't remember from the way in. Though I wasn't really paying attention on the way there, so I listened for the sounds of fun and followed my ears. The path was a little overgrown in some places, but I could clearly make out where I was meant to go and the kids' voices seemed to be getting louder. All of a sudden I was in a clearing. There were dead leaves all over the ground, which I remember thinking it was strange because it was a pine forest and a single pale, gnarled old tree right in the center of the clearing. As soon as I heard the crunch of my shoes on dead leaves, I realized that the sounds of children playing were completely gone. My face shivered involuntarily as a horrible gut-wrenching feeling of wrongness seemed to be emanating from the tree. I turned and ran all the way back to the paintball field where the rest of the guys were packing up. Someone asked me if I got lost. I made up some quick lie about forgetting something and we left. On the way back, I couldn't find the fork in the trail. And I'm glad. Pick related. When I saw Hexxus tree the first time, I gasped out loud.
I'm posting on a phone, so sorry if my spelling or anything is fucked up, autocorrect and all that. I don't live in a very rural area. Where I live it's sort of near the shore. But the land has a lot of woods. And it's very marsh-filled. If you've ever seen those really dynamite-blasted rocks in the woods, there's a shit ton of that. Anyways, I'm relatively young, and since it's pretty nice in some parts of the woods, I figure I want to set up a place deep in there for me and my friends. Now my friends aren't lazy or anything, but they never really follow through on shit. So me being nice guy Maji, I decide I'll go in the woods and set up camp for them. It's winter break, and I have to hike pretty far into the woods before I find a flat clearing right on top of this rock, overlooking the woods. By the time I'm there and setting up, it's already getting darker. And those woods look really creepy at this point. I don't think much of it, but I decided I couldn't see any of my shit, and I should start heading back. Now, unlike you guys, I did stupid shit, like go far off the trail. So once I got all my ill set up shit packed, my stomach dropped once I realized I knew fuck all where I was. I panicked and tried to call someone so that they could help me out and pick me up somewhere on the road leading to the trail so I don't have to carry all this shit in the dark. Now, I don't actually buy alien or cryptid stories. I'm really more of a ghost guy myself. I was looking out while the phone was ringing into the woods. Now this rock was overlooking a sort of valley, and the way the sun was shining through, the orange-red light mixed with the shadows really sucked the details out. And I saw what I thought was a rock next to this bush. So while I'm trying to get a hold of someone, suddenly, this rock gets up, like it were a person sitting crouched in a ball, and stepped behind this rock formation. It was really hard to see, but it didn't really look like a person. It was the same size, but there was just something weird about how it moved, and it lacked any sort of clothes by the look of it. And mind you, it's winter dot, and the way it did move, it kept face towards me, and I could have sworn it was peeking out from behind that cluster of tree and rocks. So I freeze up, and I stop what I'm doing and yell out, which I thought was pretty rude at the time. So I assumed someone was fucking with me at the time. I try to call one of my friends, but none of them are picking up. My dumbass didn't realize the service was out in my particular spot, so I start moving away from the site. Now, like I said, I don't believe in any of that cryptid shit, but what I heard was not human. I thought I was like a jet overhead at first, but it seemed softer and more drawn out, and when I turned, what I saw was the most terrifying shit in my life. It was hard to see, but something was staring through this cluster of trees just a few feet from me. I could see its fingers and hands gripping the sides of the trees, and its face half obstructed through it all. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but one of those hands slid down the tree. It was so freaky how it almost seemed shy, like how it wanted to be near me. But it was afraid to get too close. Almost like a little kid. When I said, "Who's there?" it leaned over and peeked from behind the cluster of trees, and those fucking eyes were freaky. Not like a person's. It was like they are almost protruding from its head. At that point, I just turned and booked it back where I thought I came from. I didn't even feel winded, or had any concept of time when I was running. I even managed to fuck up my ankle. And didn't even realize until I got to the road. By the time I got inside my car, I realized I was crying a bit. And the first thing I did was got home and chill the fuck out. It was really hard to see, but it didn't really look like a person. It was the same size, but it just didn't sleep that night, or tell anyone about what I saw. And I never really got that stuff back until months later. During the summer. When I went there, the stuff managed to still be up, except most of it had been rummaged through and strewn about. With the tent all fucked up, though I honestly think that was because of a storm or animals. I never went camping when they did go, and that weird-ass noise still sticks with me.
This all happened 20 minutes outside of Selkirk, Manitoba. It was about 5 or 6 years ago. I was in grade 12. I'll be greentexting for both of our convenience. A friend said that he can use his uncle's hunting cabin for a weekend. It was more of a shack. The thing was like 50 by 50 feet. 5 of us have a guy's weekend. No cells, no girlfriends, and no being a lil bitch. First day we all get drunk and smoke a bunch of weed. Our one friend got in his underwear for some reason, and when he turned to walk away from us he revealed a huge shit stain. Not really important to the story, I just like to point out he shit himself. Anyways, we wasted the day doing stupid teenager shit. The night of the first day we're all sitting around talking. Then we hear this light tapping at the door. We sit in silence for a minute or two and then ignore it and continue talking. After another couple minutes of talking we hear a slam at the door. I mean, it was enough to shake the walls of the cabin. We all dive into the nearest room, and 20 minutes of shitting ourselves we go to sleep. I'm the first to wake up and I could hear leaves crunching outside. Too scared to go to the window, I waited for the crunching to leave before getting up. Opening the door to step outside, I notice a shitload of crushed beetles on the step. At the time I didn't think anything of it, but thinking back on it, it didn't make sense. We spent the rest of the day smoking and drinking the rest of what we had. We realized we're dry of funds, booze and pot, so we decide to end the trip prematurely. I was just happy to get the fuck away after that bang. We're all packed up and stuff by, like, 11 p.m. so it's extremely dark outside. A friend wants me to come with him to turn off the generator at the back of the cabin. As we're walking around back I flash my flashlight through the woods. I'm shit scared of bears, so I'm looking for one about to slap my shit. As we get to the back of the cabin I do a sweep and see something about 30 feet away watching us from behind a tree. I keep walking but my light is frozen on this thing. It was an all-white, hairless, frail-looking man thing. It was white, hairless, had really long fingers, no nose that I could see, had really dark eyes, and must have been about between 4 and 5 feet tall. Still fucking creeps me out to this day. Anyways, I have to move my flashlight to the generator so he can see what he's doing. He shuts it off and I flash my light back to the woods to see that this thing is gone now. We're walking back and I say something along the lines of,
Anon, hurry the fuck up. Something's in the woods.
We both briskly shit ourselves to the van and jump in. We're pulling out of the driveway and I'm in the middle of telling them what just happened when my friend goes,
What the fuck is that? Fucking go, man.
We peel away and he said he saw the same thing I did walking towards us from the front of the cabin. I got him to describe it before finishing my story and he described exactly what I saw. Still freaks me out talking about it. I have no idea what it was and I'm too shit scared to go back out that way.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember that all videos have been archived on the Odyssey page.